Hi, this is Carl. We're excited to announce Microsoft's newest developer service called Azure Pipelines, a fully managed CI/CD platform for any app, language, or cloud. Azure Pipelines is integrated with GitHub through their CI marketplace and free for open source projects, with 10 concurrent jobs and unlimited build minutes for their cloud-hosted Linux, Mac OS, and Windows agents. Learn all the details by visiting azure.com/pipelines. Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And we're trying out a new system for recording our podcast today. We'll talk about that on the next show if it's actually successful. But how are you doing, Richard?
I am well, sir. We just saw on the news today a big event because a black bear was seen on the streets of Ottawa, which is the capital city back east.
Huh.
And they literally rolled out the fire department and the police, and it was tranquilized and transported off. It was like huge traumas.
Oh.
I had a mom and two cubs on my stair yesterday.
Yeah.
And they just went on their way. It's just not, granted, I have a video clip of it because, one of the little bears stood up on his hind leg and said, I'm a people, I can be a people. but it's just, cute. It's very funny, when you live with bears all the time, you're just not that excited about it.
Right.
But apparently it was a big deal in Ottawa.
Oh, well. That's cool, though. I like it. It's not cool that the bears are sort of being forced out of their habitat and coming into cities and stuff. But, it's kind of sad, but it's neat to see them.
Well, we're in a situation here where the bears are so populous, they're doing so well that they're packed too close together. Like it's a problem because they are living well with us.
Okay.
But, they do very well food wise. There's always too much garbage around. It is an interesting challenge, but
we have deer and turkeys back here. That's our wildlife,
And you know how much of a plague deer can be.
They really are. Yeah.
They are a plague.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you the story about my mother, but she feeds them corn on her property. I don't know if I've told the story on the show, but my mother basically has been corn feeding wild deer and turkeys, 50-pound bags of corn.
Nominally, those are no longer wild.
That's true. And I know in Maine, it's not illegal to feed the wildlife. It's illegal to stop feeding them. We don't, it's true. We don't have laws like that in Connecticut, but maybe we should. I don't know. But I don't know. That sort of puts me on the hook to continue feeding them for the rest of my life. But anyway, nice. Can you imagine, so this has been going on for 20 years. So there are generations of wild turkeys that have been eating corn every day. They must be delicious.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we have a solution to that. You can't stop feeding them thing. What if we just eat them?
I love that idea. However, they're her pets. She doesn't let people hunt them.
It takes all the fun out of it.
I know, really. All right, let's roll the music for Better Know Framework.
Awesome. All right, man, what do you got?
This one came from the guys at AppV Next. It's called Bogus.
Bogus?
Install-package Bogus. Bogus for .NET, C#, F#, and VBNet, basically common language runtime languages. And he says, hello, I'm your host, Brian Chavez. Bogus is a simple, insane, fake data generator for .NET languages like C#, F#, and VBNet. Bogus is fundamentally a C# port of Faker.js and inspired by Fluent Validation's syntax sugar.
Nice.
So Bogus will help you load databases, UI, and apps with fake data for your testing needs. It's pretty cool. And there are some projects that use it. Elasticsearch.NET Client.
Wow.
Microsoft Windows XAML Template 10. Microsoft Learning developing Azure Solutions. Microsoft Office Dev. Microsoft Teams Sample Connector. And a whole bunch of people going nuts over this. So Bogus. Know it, learn to love it.
Nice.
Who's talking to us, buddy?
Grabbed a comment off of show 1324. That's from July of 2016. We were talking to Jimmy Engstrom while we were in Oslo at NDC. Mm-hmm. And, Jimmy's one of those guys who gets around into different technologies. And this particular show was about all join. So this was a Qualcomm specification with the Linux Foundation to try and create a common languages for IoT devices to communicate. And admittedly, in the intervening couple of years, it's sort of fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
It's just one of those protocols, like many, that's just not taken off. And I think the comment here, which again is also 2 years old, is super relevant because it's interesting to see where these various projects have gone. So Brandon Paget said, Google has several different sorts of projects in this area. One is called Brillo, which is an embedded platform for IoT. Now, today, if you go to that link, it's called Android Things.
Right.
So they just sort of, names change stuff. These used to be all developer Google sites, but now it's something completely different. Another is called Weave, which is a communication platform with security baked in. And when you go to that link for developers at Google, you actually go to Nest.com, which is owned by Google. It's still called Weave, but it's particularly for connecting together home-based IoT type devices, keypads, the Nest thermostat, security systems, that kind of thing. But very much focused on the Nest stack, which is not a bad thing. And finally, Google has also started a project called Thread. Thread has a large number of members, and Qualcomm is one of them. I believe the idea is that all join would be able to work on top of Thread, and gave the link to the threadgroup.org, which is still the threadgroup.org. So this is another networking protocol, expanding connectivity between different devices, both commercial, residential, and so forth. So I'm glad we're talking further about IoT and getting deeper into the stacks on all of these things, but it's just a realization that we're all still groping around. Like, for better or worse, that all join story hasn't gone very far, but there's a bunch of other projects. And I'll include links to everything that Brandon mentioned here because it is pretty cool stuff.
Great.
And, we're definitely working from a moving target.
That's awesome.
So, Brendan, thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or via any of our social media, as we publish every show to Facebook and Google+. And if you comment there and we read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. He's at Rich Campbell. I'm at Carl Franklin. Send us a tweet. We pass them on to Bogus, who uses them as random value generator seeds. Nice.
You, too, could be a randomly generated address from Nebraska.
That's right. You'll show up in somebody's database somewhere. Let's bring back to .NET Rocks one Suz Hinton. She is a JavaScript developer who likes to tinker with hardware, a maker at heart. She's no stranger to minor burns from soldering irons and 3D printers, and she's a regular contributor to the open source NodeJS electronics scene and enjoys teaching others how to immerse themselves in the nerdiverse. Welcome back, Suz.
Thanks for having me back. I'm really excited.
You still have your shoes?
Yes, I do. And I have a funny story to tell you about this.
Okay.
I think the last time I spoke to you all, I think there was like a book coming out with like instructions on how to make these shoes.
Right.
And the book came out and I didn't really hear if anyone made the shoes. And then my best friend's dad went to Maker Faire in Japan, and that's where he lives. He went to Maker Faire Tokyo, and there was this one booth set up with MeowShoes, and right next to it was a screen that was just endlessly looping all of my YouTube videos.
Oh my goodness.
And it just blew my mind. Like, he took a photo of it, he tweeted it at me, and I was just like, someone actually did it, but also, why are they playing my YouTube videos? That's super weird, but very cool. So,
but at least that's, accreditation, right? They weren't claiming the shoes as their own.
Yeah, it was really exciting. It was awesome.
Here's the amazing person who made them.
Yeah.
Those shoes are 5 years old. I'm looking at the GitHub site.
Yeah, they're really old. It's like some pretty bad JavaScript too. Maybe before this goes live, I'll go and fix it.
I can't imagine anybody being proud of any code they wrote 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm totally going to look at it after this, and it's going to give me that sort of, ooh, look how far I've come sort of feeling, but also deep-seated feeling of shame.
If you want to know what joke we're sort of in on here, we're talking about Suz's last show with us, which was her first, which was 1106 from February 13, 2015, called Building IoT Devices with Suz Hinton, where she talked about her MeowShoes. Just want to give people the reference there.
Of course.
So what are you up to lately?
I now work at Microsoft, which is really exciting.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Yeah.
You are a cloud developer advocate?
That's correct. So I am focused on IoT, so nothing much has changed there. It's just I've pulled my hobby into my professional life now, which is pretty exciting for me to be able to do. And so that keeps me pretty busy, but on the side, I'm still doing IoT things right now. I just moved apartments, so I'm trying to make a humorous smart house, and I'm sort of in the middle of that. Yeah.
How into smart house automation are you? Do you go all out? Light switches, the whole thing?
So I like the idea of all of that, but I don't like the idea of every single contraption being on a different API and a different provider and things like that, and having to then find a service to unify them all, such as Alexa or something like that.
Right.
And so I'm trying to sort of roll my own, not because it's the smart or time efficient thing to do, but because it just means that, I'm only going to add the things that I really want to. And it also means that I'm going to learn a lot along the way. And I can also just do things exactly how I see that they should be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, you said a humorous smart house. Does that mean, you step on a something and it triggers like a whoopee cushion sounds? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what that means.
Directly to fart jokes. Okay.
It's similar to that. So last night I was testing out a tap sensor that I'm going to sort of sew into I have this life-size raccoon plush, and if you tap it on the head, it will turn the lights on in the room. So it's sort of like hidden IoT, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I like
so they
that.
don't look like devices that should control things, but everything you touch interacts with something else.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be whimsical.
Right.
Yeah, you could go one step further and make everything a practical joke, right? So, some people have a smart house to impress their friends. You want to make them never want to come back.
Well, I want to delight them. So there will be lots of little things like that. And I don't want to spoil it, because I sort of want to make sure that everything is achievable. But yeah, last night I was testing out the thresholds of the tap sensor to figure out can I put it as like a collar around the raccoon's neck, or should I just sew it directly into, just underneath the fur so that you can just tap it straight on the head? So that was sort of what I was figuring out last night when I got home from work.
That's pretty cool. I'd put something in the guest room that would play something like, Sally, they're out there.
Great. Terrifying people.
I'm sorry. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. So we're talking Node and IoT today. You must have some really interesting projects you've been working on there with Node.
Yeah, so that has been taking up a lot of my time, and I am actually implementing that smart house in NodeJS. And so I'm either going to deploy that to a Raspberry Pi and be running like a NodeJS server and a NodeJS IoT Edge runtime, or I might also see if I can run it from a Tessel, which is a microcontroller that's not quite as beefy as a Raspberry Pi, but it's designed for the Node IoT ecosystem specifically. So it's actually a real joy to work with. Its deployment strategy is actually like really much more convenient than for a Raspberry Pi.
They're quite a bit smaller too, aren't they? Like just really kind of a little square block.
Yeah, they're a lot smaller, and they also have a built-in ADC, which is like an analog to digital converter. So you sort of can't really use a lot of analog sensors, out of the box with a Raspberry Pi, because it doesn't have any analog inputs, and so you have to use like an ADC with it, or you have to have a sensor breakout that speaks I2C I2C or something like that.
Which is pretty much the default thing you do every time. I was just playing with a Beagle bone. Mm-hmm. And same thing, directly to I2C, like that is the device, that is the protocol it seems you want to use.
Yeah, pretty much. There are a ton of like SparkFun and Adafruit sensors that have been broken out to I2C specifically for BeagleBones and Raspberry Pis for sure. It's very convenient.
Nice. And it looks like inexpensive too. I've not played with the Tessel too, but they're little.
Yeah, it does look cool.
Everything's from SparkFun. $45.
It's pretty good. And because it runs, at the moment, the operating system is OpenWRT. It means that you can also have like a wireless access point running from it. So it could be like a little server within your house too, and it can serve things like games or web pages or something like that. And so I think it's kind of
WRT, fun. Like the WRT54G, the old Linksys router.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now it lives in an IoT device. Like that OS is never going away. It's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I thought it was awesome. So like you can actually, set up some very similar things that you would set up on your router, but you can do it with like some inputs and outputs for IoT as well, which I think is really, really cool as a combination.
And you work from Wi-Fi. Like that's the way to communicate with this thing is it's on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so the idea is once you've provisioned it with Wi-Fi, you can actually deploy over the air to it, which is really cool. And then you can also connect to it as a wireless access point, like you said, and have your networking through that.
So it looks like there's quite a few modules for it, and 10-pin USB and community-created modules. I'm looking for, because we were talking a lot about IoT a few years ago, and then it just sort of, I don't know, wasn't cool anymore. And I'm looking for like some of the cooler sensors that, everybody knows what accelerometers are, and, SD cards and motion detectors and color sensors, and those things are pretty cool. But what are some things that are fairly new sensor-wise that people might be interested in?
I think some of the things that people are really excited about now is being able to plug in a device that essentially can crunch like machine learning models and things for you. So it's off the device, so the device doesn't have to be super powerful, but at the same time you can be using like a webcam or something like that with a low-powered device, and you can be streaming that data to like a USB connected module that's crunching that, custom vision model that you've installed or something like that. I think that's probably where we're seeing some of the more exciting things outside of just your basic sensors. Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, there's so many services that you can connect to in the cloud. Yeah, that really has grown up since we last talked about IoT on the show.
So you're programming everything in JavaScript. How do you get to a machine learning model from JavaScript?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we do have things like TensorFlow.js now, which is really cool. So you can actually run things in that. And you can also just store your model in the cloud, and you can be streaming data to, a offsite endpoint, again, similar to doing it with an offsite module. And you can be getting your answers from there as well. And so, JavaScript is incredibly good at calling APIs because that's what you're doing a lot of the time in the browser. And so there are a few options. And I know that with the introduction of WebAssembly, we're actually seeing better and better performance when it comes to running things that are pretty CPU intensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how long before we see little boards like Teslas with a shield that's actually a big old GPU on it, that you just offload the work to the GPU, even still on the unit.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you don't need that hardcore of a GPU to be doing some of these computational models, and it's just so much better at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, these things are generally powered by USB, right? And, last time I checked, GPUs required a lot of electricity.
Yeah, you can actually plug in external power sources. I know that even with things like motors, you can brown out a Raspberry Pi very quickly by attaching too many motors. So people are usually used to having a supply, like a double power supply for whatever they're running. Even some boards do better with like more than just, 1.5 amps anyway.
Yeah, I ran into that with that BeagleBone. When you want to burn the eMMC, you need 2 amps.
Yes.
And if you don't have two, we were running a 1 amp and everything ran fine until you tried to update the eMMC, and then it just stalled. Like, nope.
Yeah, this happened to me on the Raspberry Pi just a week ago. I was running Windows IoT Core on it, which allows you to do .NET and IoT, which I'm also happy to talk about with you. And what happened was it was booting up perfectly, and my UWP app that I deployed to it would start up. But then all of a sudden, I lost network connectivity. The Ethernet lights, on my port would go dark, and I was like, what is happening? Like, is it a firewall issue? Is it just like the bridged connection I created with my computer is out? Like, what is happening? And it took me 2 days to pinpoint that it wasn't a full blackout or brownout. It was just that it would stop trying to prioritize certain peripherals when it didn't have enough current to draw. And the problem was I was powering it from I was powering the Raspberry Pi from the USB port of my laptop.
Right.
And as soon as I plugged it into like a wall charger instead, all of a sudden the network came back and a bunch of my other, like my webcam came back, and it was the most face palm moment for me, because when you're sort of in that slightly gray area in between, you know, enough power and completely underpowered, it is so frustrating to debug.
And it doesn't generate good error messages. It just, stuff doesn't work, and the errors you get are vague. They're just like, what's that got to do with anything?
Exactly. It's completely vague.
Absolutely. And Suz, sorry to interrupt you, but I've got to break just for a moment for this very important message. Hi, this is Richard. The Dev Intersection Fall Show this year will be December 3rd to 6th in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Hotel. The lineup is awesome. Scott Guthrie, Scott Hanselman, Scott Hunter, yes, all the Scotts. But also a ton of great industry speakers for some insight on what's coming up in the world of .NET. You know, Core 3 is bringing client technology like WinForms and WPF into play. Could it be time to migrate your existing desktop apps to this new technology? Come learn more at Dev Intersection, December 3rd to 6th in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. Go to devintersection.com to register and use the code .NETROCKS to get a discount. And we're back. Richard Campbell, Carl Franklin. It's .NET Rocks. And we're talking to Suz Hinton about a little Node, a little IoT, a little Tesla board, and just how important power is in these scenarios. USB is terrible.
I was just about to say that, because the problem is these wall adapters, they all have different outputs, and different things require different amounts of power.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen something like the iPhone charger doesn't have enough power?
Yeah, and then you get those ones that have two different USB ports, and it's just so clumsily labeled. Like one will say iPhone and the other one will say iPod, because, you know, the iPod has much more current draw to charge. And it's like, why can't you just make it the maximum? Because devices are only going to draw the current that they actually need. And so there's nothing, I guess it comes down to money and budget and things like that.
Yeah, but we're talking about USB plugs. Like they're 20, I like Anchor. You know, I may spend $40 on a 4-way USB port, but every one of those buggers is 2 amps. Like you stop having problems.
I literally just bought 5 of those for my smart home. Yes. And they're actually the Anchor ones. Yeah. They're just piled up in my study right now.
Are you talking about the batteries? The battery chargers?
No, they also just make wall chargers. They make premium USB gear, period.
Well, I found that the Anchor, power bricks that I talked about on the show, these big ones, those things require the right USB charger. Otherwise, they sort of blow up on you. They stop working. And it's not very clear how much they need. I think I've ruined a couple of them. Either that or they just stopped for whatever reason, but they just stopped charging.
Yeah, I don't want to worry about too much about the batteries. I care about the chargers, just being able to provide enough power for devices to work reliably. It's a small thing in your life to just spend a few dollars on a good charger, and the whole class of problem goes away.
Yeah, you never have to worry about it ever again. You'll forget you even set it up. That's kind of what guys, I want.
I'm ordering a whole bunch of Anchor chargers right now.
That's also a good way to make friends. Showing up at an airport power outlet where some guy's hogging it and you can pull out a 6-way charger and go, let's be friends. And besides, I'll charge you faster than you can anyway.
That's so true.
Yeah. He's bonding over the USB ports, I swear.
You are much more social than me at airports. I admire you for this. Like that's just an excuse for people to talk to you, which I'm trying to avoid at all costs. Yeah.
Well, being enthusiastic about USB generally drives people to stop talking to you fairly quickly. Just pick an odd enough, because I don't actually want to talk to them. I just want to charge my stuff. So this is a way for me to get access to the charger to charge my stuff. They can charge their stuff. Like, we're all better off. But then that need to communicate, just be weird enough that they find something else to do.
I'm going to try this next time I'm at the airport, or I will report back. That's going to be in like 4 weeks' time anyway. So yeah, you'll hear back from me soon.
There you go.
Awesome. I've
also found the line when they're, arguing about something, when you say they're first against the wall when the revolution comes, everybody stops talking to you after that. It's like usually they're complaining about the airport, or United Airlines, or, some airline, you're like, those guys are worse. So like, yeah, they're first against the wall when the revolution comes. People will leave you alone after that.
So is Tesla your platform of choice? Are there others that you use, and are there different reasons to use different platforms?
Yeah, I use a variety of things. So the Tesla is really good when you want something quite powerful and you're trying to rapidly prototype. But when you're doing something like a smart home, for example, you might want to use that to be sort of the central device that all the other devices talk to. And then you just have one sort of commander device, which you could call like an edge device, for example. And that's what might be communicating back up to the internet if you want to, keep an eye on your house when you're outside of, out and about. But the other devices just have to talk to your Tesla, for example. And so my device of choice when I'm not using a Tesla, but I still need something like Wi-Fi, is something like an ESP8266 or an ESP32 device, because those breakouts, depending on where you get them and how many you buy at a time, you can get one of those usually with like voltage regulation, which is really important, and also just like a USB serial communication as well, which is really handy. You can get sort of a breakout like that for between $5 and $10 depending on your budget, which is really cool. And I just bought a bunch of them for my smart home as well, so they're piled up next to all the Anker chargers.
Nice. So do you keep a stack of components around? Just got a workshop full of the bits and bobs that you need?
Yeah, I have like a box of shame, I call it, because because the
drawer of broken dreams.
Oh, okay, so let's go back to the last episode that I was on. I think I had just started working at Kickstarter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just started maybe a week before, and since then, like, I backed like 130 things when I was working there. And sometimes it was just $5, no reward, right? I just wanted to see something happen. But whenever it was like an IoT related thing, I'm like, no, I must have this new board. It must have something that's better than all the others, right? And so I definitely accumulated a couple of dozen of those kind of boards. And so now I have this box of shame, but I get really excited when I'm like, oh, wait, I had like the Onion Omega 2, and that's got this one little thing on it that would be really convenient for this project. So sometimes I can grab from the grab bag, and then other times it's just more to make me feel guilty. But I love having, like, I live in a place that gives me an extra room just to myself to hack. So it's not just on my computer, but I also have like an area where I can solder, and I also have storage in that closet. So I'm really lucky that I've been able to make some space where I live to be able to hack around.
Very cool.
The Omega 2 is a cool little gizmo.
It is.
You talk about a compact little, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it runs, the first version ran MicroPython, but I think you might be able to run full Python on it now, which is really, really cool.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Do the operating systems really matter? Isn't it always come down to the language, and the language tends to be JavaScript, although with the occasional Python exception? Yeah,
it really doesn't matter. And these days, it doesn't matter a lot the language you want to choose either, right? Because you can go from C all the way up to something as highly abstracted and dynamic, such as JavaScript. But for me, it's more about... For me, I get more excited about security features now built into the device, because all of the rest are kind of the same. So something such as Azure Sphere, which is designed like with so many layers of security, that makes me see boards standing out from others because of that, because that's the last thing I really want to worry about. I just want to build a cool thing, and having to configure like updates and things like that is such a pain to me. And that's something that is a little bit finicky with the ESP8266s.
And I am in the midst of trying to schedule Galen to come and talk about Azure Sphere. But before that, you better explain it, because that's not a little device, right? There's much more to Azure Sphere than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I sort of want to give them a chance to explain it, so I can kind of give the high level explanation, just because, I've been able to sort of have a quick look at it just because of privileges of working at Microsoft. But it's essentially an ecosystem. So it's not just security that is on the device level, but it's also security on the cloud level as well. And we're going to be running like an actual Linux-based operating system too, which is really, really exciting.
Microsoft has their own Linux.
It's super exciting. So that just means that we can do things like we can guarantee security patches for, a certain period of time of using the device and things like that. And so it's not just writing secure code that you deploy to the device, but it's really about, well, what other features does the device have built in? And then if I'm speaking to cloud services, what security does that cloud service offer as well? So that, at every level, we're mitigating those risks.
But I appreciate that this is all integrated in so that the average developer doesn't have to think about it. It's just always there.
Yep.
Yeah. What I want is for people to just be able to write code and not worry that they're going to be the next Mirai attack that's DDoS, with the webcam DDoSing the entire internet. You know what I mean? That's,
right.
That definitely kind of showed people the potential of not locking stuff down properly, and it's given people a lot of fear about getting started. So, this is our take on how you avoid that stuff by just not having to have people worry about it as much as they would normally have to.
Sure.
Smart.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah, buddy.
Guess what time it is now?
It must be that happy time again.
Yeah, it's time to switch it up a little bit. See what ensues.
Oh, geez.
Suz, I'm hinting at something here. Did you get it?
Oh, my goodness.
Make the bad man stop.
I'm sorry. They'll never forget your name now.
They will not. And I think that
and
is
I took
literally
the bullet for
first.
You. I was willing to bear my bad humor soul out there and take it in the face to get your name out. Yes,
there
I
you
did.
Go.
Thanks. Okay, she's not thanking me. It's actually time. Gee, thanks, Franklin. It's actually time to give away a $200 Amazon gift card, compliments of Progress Telerik to one lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club. But first, let me tell you about the most comprehensive developer toolkit for building modern apps on the market today, Telerik DevCraft. With more than 1,100 Telerik .NET and Kendo UI JavaScript components and controls, you can easily build modern, high-performant web, mobile, and desktop apps, as well as chatbots. The toolset also includes reporting solutions, automated testing, and productivity tools, and comes with a range of support options. New this year is a free online training program for all license holders. With this, alongside thousands of demos with source code, comprehensive docs, and a full assortment of Visual Studio templates, you'll be up and running with the Progress Telerik and Kendo UI tools in no time. Download a free 30-day trial today at telerik.com/download.
Well, all right, buddy. Who's our winner?
Today's winner is Dennis K. Henner.
Congratulations, Dennis.
Yeah.
Golf clap for you.
Absolutely. And Dennis just won a $200 Amazon gift card from Progress Telerik just for being a member of the .NET Rocks fan club.
Buy some Anchor gear.
Absolutely. By the way, I just ordered 6 of those things.
Did you really? That's awesome.
I did. If you'd like to be a member of the .NET Rocks fan club, go to .NETRocks.com, click on the big Get Free Stuff button, answer a few questions, and join the fan club. We have thousands of members all over the world. Every show, we like to give away stuff from our sponsors, and every December, we give away a $5,000 technology shopping spree to one lucky member of the fan club. But you have to sign up to win. We also like to ask our guests, Suz, if you had $5,000 to spend on technology today, what would you buy?
That's really hard because there are so many things that I want to get right now. But I'm going to focus on one, and then I might be sneaky and mention a second one. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the things.
The first one that I want is I would love a Glowforge Pro, which is a laser cutter.
I'm just adding these to the show notes. These are too cool.
Yeah, they're really, really cool. I could really use one in my apartment. Like, usually I have to go to a hackerspace or I have to use an online service like Pinocchio to do my laser cutting. And that just means that you're spending extra time and it's just not as convenient as being able to rapidly prototype in your own house. So they just introduced this new air filter, which means you don't have to have this dryer laundry hose going out your window, and annoying the neighbors with your fumes. And so I'm pretty excited that it seems like it's more apartment ready now. So I definitely want to get one of them for sure.
Yeah.
And now you're doing subtractive manufacturing, right? I mean, you are taking something and cutting stuff away as opposed to doing it additively with a 3D printer. I presume you have one. Yeah,
I have a 3D printer already, and just having the laser cutter would mean that it would just go next level where I have access to both, which is really, really awesome. And the laser cutter tends to be a lot faster, especially when you just want flat sheets of things. You also just have like slightly better accuracy as well.
Yeah. Wow, cool.
The MSRP on a Glowforge Pro is about $6,000. So you have burned down the...
Oh, no. Okay. So what I would get is the Glowforge Basic for, I think, $3,000 something, and then I would add the filter, which is about just under $1,000. Right. So let's go with that.
There you go. The plus with the filter option, I think you nail it at $5,000.
Okay, yeah, I think I meant to say plus instead of pro. So yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pros, I think the larger platform, so you can do more stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
No, it's awesome. And it's neat to see the home scale maker stuff continuing to evolve. That, this combination of having your own laser cutter and your own 3D printer, you really are getting all up.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Hey, Suz, whatever happened to the Raspberry Pi running Windows and us building apps in C# for IoT?
Yeah, do you want to talk about that? Because I'm pretty excited because I don't write a lot of .NET day to day, which is why I'm so excited to be on this show because I realize that I'm being a rebel. And so,
.NET does not rock. JavaScript rocks. Thank you very much.
I got a colleague who is very good at .NET to code review actually the .NET that I wrote because I wrote a smart home device using .NET for a video series for Visual Studio Toolbox, which is one of our Channel 9 Microsoft series. And I'm actually recording the last episode directly after this podcast, so that's really exciting. Yeah, so cool. So you can essentially load up your SD card into a Windows box and it will transfer a Windows 10 image, and it's a special flavor of Windows 10 for IoT. It'll put it on the SD card and then you can just boot up your Raspberry Pi and you can write UWP apps for your Raspberry Pi, but it gives you access to all these extra cool classes as part of your sort of .NET tool belt, including things like the GPIO, I2C, SPI, things like that. And so anything that you plug into your Raspberry Pi that you would normally use, even things like webcams, for media capturing and things like that, you can essentially start writing UWP apps, but you can be interacting with things like LEDs and sensors, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, cool. Is there any security benefit to using .NET or a liability for that matter?
I think it would just be what you would regularly do with UWP apps, essentially. Just be aware that if you build it in an insecure manner, people can literally control physical hardware. So that's just the extra stuff that you need to think about. But honestly, when you're writing Windows IoT Core like UWP apps, it feels so exactly the same to your regular apps. You're just controlling things that might catch fire.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember doing a show with Scott Hanselman, one of the Hansel Minutias, and he was raging on about malware and hacks and so forth. And I showed him a hack where it was actually a Word document that was certain firmwares on certain HP inkjet printers would cause the head to stroke so hard over the spot it would actually set fire to the paper.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Software can set your printer on fire.
And all you did was print a document.
Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff to start fires with hardware, and that's always my biggest fear is someone going to figure out a way to keep the Raspberry Pi CPU super, super hot without it actually turning off? And, what can they do with that? Or can they do something with the fan where they're spinning the fan in a certain way that sends certain audio communications to a different device? I just really worry about weird exploits.
That brings your funhouse to a whole new level.
Yes, it does. But I think someone's done that. I think someone's used a fan to communicate via audio to a malicious device that's listening nearby, and that just blows my mind.
That's pretty nutty.
It's code terrorism.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Could you get good enough control over fan to make sounds good enough to say issue an Alexa command?
Ooh, I don't know, because I know that Alexa has she understands secret high-frequency noises, right?
Oh, yeah, we heard about that.
Yeah, so when they run ads about Alexa, they play special sounds so that she knows not to respond to those advertisements and things like that. And this is another reason why I want to do all of my own IoT, because when you know that, how do you know your TV is not secretly communicating with Alexa at all times?
Right.
That's so creepy to me.
Well, and for me, coming from the network perspective, I'm more monitoring network traffic so I can see when a device I don't expect to communicate does communications. It's interesting how we lean on our existing skills. You're thinking in terms of I can control these devices because you're used to programming them. I come with a pretty strong network background where it's like, I unplugged my Samsung TV from the network for a reason.
Yes.
It kept having conversations I did not expect it to have. And I'm like, I don't care who you're talking to. You're talking to exactly nobody from now on.
Yep. That's pretty much how I feel. And that's also why I like, IoT edge computing, because you have one device that's speaking to all of the other smaller, less smart devices. And I think that that is an easier way to be able to disconnect the whole thing if you absolutely need to.
Right.
Yeah. But it is interesting when you start thinking in terms of security built in, and Azure Sphere, I think, is a step towards that, is that we are headed down this software-defined networking path where part of your manifest for your application will be exactly what devices communicate with what other devices in what ways, so that by default, everything's turned off. There's no communication between devices. You literally provide a manifest of what communication you're allowed, which is the opposite of the way networking works these days.
Yeah, totally. So you have things like you have MAC address whitelists instead of like just reactively blacklisting and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I like. It's just that still, once you're on that whitelist, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, that's so true.
Okay, what port, and now you go to port level, now you go to IP level, but really you want to talk protocols. What are the kinds of messages you're sending? What's the shape of them? What keys are you using? I mean, you can get quite specific if we get all the way down there.
That's
and
very
coming
true.
in from an app perspective, I think we'll have a lot more control. It should be just part of the manifest when you're coding. It's like, these are the commands I'm going to issue. You see other commands, you should ask me.
I totally agree with that. This should be a really easy way to declaratively say what the purpose of the device is, and that it's not allowed to be outside of that. I think that's a really good point, if that's the correct paraphrase of that.
I think a developer knows what the intended use of their systems are for the most part. You may not know exactly the commands that are being issued, but the fact that from a network perspective, we're coming up on that, it makes far more sense for it to come down from a programming perspective. That the same way that you build tests around behavior, you have a manifest of networking. And so many problems go away if only allow me to say the following things in the following way, and everything else is wrong.
So I'm really interested in some of the stories of these bad hacks that happened to IoT. And I found a site called at IoT for All, and it's an article, The 5 Worst IoT Hacking Vulnerabilities, and we'll put a link in the show notes. But I'm wondering if there are any stories that stick out to you, Suz. I mean, you're obviously interested in IoT and security, and these attacks are hard, and but they happen. So are there any really spectacular things that come to mind?
Honestly, the biggest one for me was the one that I mentioned earlier, which was the Mirai malware, which caused any device, with hard-baked, credentials into it, such as admin and password as the username and password, to be able to start DDoSing things around the world. To me, that's definitely still the biggest one in my mind, just because of the scale of the damage that was done.
Yeah. Here's one on the list, the hackable cardiac devices from St. Jude.
Oops.
And so the news story on CNN was, the FDA confirmed that St. Jude Medical's implantable cardiac devices have vulnerabilities that could allow a hacker to access a device. Once in, they could deplete the battery or administer incorrect pacing or shocks, the FDA said. The devices like pacemakers and defibrillators are used to monitor and control patients' heart functions and prevent heart attacks. Not so much if somebody can connect with their iPhone.
Yeah, you really don't want medical devices to be hacked. That's bad.
No, not at all. And actually, this site here reminds me of the second one that I had, which was people are starting to hack the CAN bus protocol in cars and things like that. And then, sure enough, number 5 on this is the Jeep SUV hack.
The famous Jeep hack.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Although, admittedly, if you actually go read the Wired wrote a great report on this, it took them a year to put that hack together. Like that was not, now, I mean, once it's done, it's done. They put it up for the script kiddies to run and everybody can do it. But they came in through the entertainment system because it wanted Spotify and Pandora access and integrated, and were able to control the vehicle's CAN bus. And once they turned off the brakes, that's the moment.
There's a guy who did that on a plane too. He hacked in through the entertainment center.
Well, it's more complicated than that. It wasn't actually. He was able to crash some entertainment systems, but he wasn't able to access anything else.
Oh, okay. So, fake news.
Well, more, you try and explain this to the average press person. Good luck. It's complicated.
Right.
And this again comes back to there are certain companies you can trust to get this right. And I'm not saying that I'm actually any better than the companies that are doing this. But if I implement stuff myself, I can think about this, do the research, and do things to the best of my ability. At least I know, hopefully, where all my vulnerabilities are if I'm setting up a smart house or something, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so that's also sort of a big motivator for me to learn, because if I set this up, then, I'm going to end up learning about security along the way as well. Whereas you put a lot of faith in these companies.
Yes. Well, and we do want secure by default behaviors. I mean, I think that's one of the interesting realities. It's just like you have to figure out the security rules in advance. You can't decide to turn them on later.
Yeah.
There's a story in Wired about how hackers messed with traffic lights to jam roads and reroute cars.
That sounds like Die Hard.
2014.
Remember when they hacked the city in Die Hard?
Live free or die hard, yeah.
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 Oh, man. You can actually get totally trapped in the whole security terror thing and just like, I don't want to do any of this.
Right.
We got to be better at it. And I think we are getting better at it. I don't know how you feel about Suz, but it seems to be getting better.
I do. I think I've just sort of been able to do more research, but also I'm just seeing cloud companies, such as Microsoft, just get a lot better at this because they realize that that's a huge marketable strategy. If people know and trust your stuff, then that's a huge, win for your platform.
Sure.
It's also the end of the road if we don't figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's just like no one's going to want to do IoT. We're going to just see this whole thing wind down. And that's a real shame because I think that some of the stuff that we do with IoT right now is like super gimmicky. It's kind of like VR. We're seeing like, okay, well, that's a cute thing. But what I want is for us to sort of really be still working on it for the time it takes for us to really come across the good things that this can be used for.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I'm kind of done with the blinking LED.
Yeah. Wait, have you built like a deployment light though? When it goes green when all your tests pass and things like that? Because I feel like that's the developer hello world. It's not sending weather data. It's actually like showing the status of your builds.
Right.
My original implementation of one of those was with the NABAZ tag. Do you remember the NABAZ tag? That's a long time ago.
I don't think I do.
No,
this is like a fodder directly from the original .com boom. It was a little rabbit with movable ears.
Oh, that
white
guy.
bunny.
I do remember this.
And blinking lights. And it was our you broke the build warning. The ears went down and it played the sad trombone.
Right.
I
love that.
Yeah. And then it was one of those early cloud services where then the service provider went away. They didn't finance it properly. And so it became dead. There's nothing you could do with it because it was hardwired to this cloud service that died.
That's the problem.
And I opened the show with a conversation exactly like that about AllJoin. It's like we're experimenting with all of these things and stuff goes away. And you got to be prepared for it, they just break down.
Yeah, there was like, I forget the company now and I feel so bad, but there was a product called the Little Printer. And, Borg Cloud was the company, BORG. And I had it in my house and I really wanted lots of other people to have a Borg Cloud printer because you could send each other pictures and things. It was essentially a very cute IoT-ified thermal receipt printer. But you could subscribe to these feeds, which were kind of like RSS. And, these feeds every day would give you sort of like the daily joke or the daily news or a daily puzzle. But you could also print photos from your phone, kind of like a Game Boy camera style sort of thing. And I loved that so much. And they weren't a successful startup in the end and they shut down. What was nice, though, was that they open sourced all of their stuff. And so if you wanted to host it, you could. And I think that's sort of what I'm seeing companies do now. They've sort of almost been open source by default because then it is actually a better PR story, even if they do wind down. But yeah, it is still sad that happens. I mean, I didn't end up running my own custom server for it, but maybe I'll go online after this and check, because now I'm sad about this printer again.
And I think it's interesting for us as the sort of technorati of this to insist, I will not try your thing if you don't have a survival plan like that you aren't open sourcing. So there is a way forward no matter what happens.
That does make sense. And we were just talking about the Glowforge earlier. They have a story like that where they have like their certain version of firmware, which is not necessarily, I forget it exactly, but they're controlling their machine in a certain way, which is closed source. And so there was a bit of an uproar about that from people, because they're like, well, if your service ever closes down, or if we can't access, the software to be able to even just cut things out with this $6,000 machine that we bought, then it becomes a $6,000 piece of metal. And so they ended up offering an alternative by saying, well, we're going to still go with this software approach, but here is the alternative open source version that you can still run it with if we ever stop operating as a company. And I thought that was a nice middle ground.
Well, the other side of that, as soon as you create an open source version, is that if your customers start disagreeing with the direction you're taking the code, they can start building their own. And, you may find out that the masses are better than you are.
That's right. I mean, you see with 3D printers, all of the different open source firmware options out there. There's just been a lot of rapid innovation, even just in the time that I was in the 3D printing space. And me being able to I altered the firmware of my 3D printer several times in order to add new features to it. And that to me saves me a ton of money. I was literally just bolting on things like, bed leveling sensors, and then just like copy pasting code around to get it to work with my printer. And that to me just means that planned obsolescence issue does go away as well. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, Suz, what is next for you? What's in your inbox? What are you working on?
I'm still working on my smart home, actually. That's the thing that I only just started on a few days ago. So that's sort of what I'm doing. But I will be traveling and speaking at some conferences really soon too. So that's going to take up a fair amount of time for me.
Are you doing any of your smart home stuff on Twitch?
Yes, I will be later this month. Yes. Because I tend to be just working on this on the weekend because it's more of a fun pet project for me. So that is the plan, is to maybe not this weekend, but the weekend after, I'll probably be almost very certainly working on that.
Awesome.
Very good.
I'm excited because it's all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
See, we couldn't just go with commercial grade, get a Nest thermostat and a ring and no. You're going to roll it all yourself.
Yeah, I think it's more fun that way. And a lot of people are like, Suz, this is just not efficient. And I'm like, you're missing the point. It's supposed to be fun. And, why do people buy puzzles instead of a complete artwork? Because it's fun to put the puzzle together. And so there's a saying in the POC or GTFO community, which is, I'm building my own bird feeder. And it's just saying, just leave me alone, because for me, it's the act of building, not the final product, that is the reward that I'm seeking.
Love that sentiment. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us, Suz. It's always great, and hope you come back again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Give me another call in 3 years' time again.
Absolutely, we will. All right, and we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Pwop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got a transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a